Hello everyone, this is Leanne from Of Love and Shiplap and the founder of Sublimation graphics and tutorials on YouTube and Facebook. Please be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel so you never miss out on any of our tutorials. Tonight I want to show you guys the quick and easy method to create a blown out watercolor like look with a PNG or a photograph that you may have. We're going to be working in Affinity Designer, but the same steps do actually apply to Affinity Photo, so you can use either of those softwares for this. I'm working on a Windows PC. The steps are the same with a Mac, although your interface might look slightly different than mine does. Keep in mind that if you enjoy this tutorial and you want to learn everything there is to know about using Affinity Designer start to finish, then check out the Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass for Sublimation. This is a 100-hour video course. It's beginner friendly. You don't need to know anything to start. It is learn at your own time, on your own schedule. It includes one-on-one email support for questions throughout the course and has fun design challenges built in with chances to win prizes. In addition to that, this course is built in a progressive style. It is unlike any course that is out there, so if you've been disappointed before, that's not going to be the case here. The progressive format ensures that you are constantly building on the skills that you're learning and reinforcing them so that you can feel successful using this software when you are done. Use the code SUBTHAT to save $30. That link is in the video description. We're going to go ahead and get started by clicking on File and choosing New to open a new document. Now, I'm not really working for a specific substrate right now, so I'm just going to choose letter size as just whatever size to use for this project. We want to make sure that our DPI is set to 300. And of course, you can adjust your document units based on what you prefer. I'm working in inches today. For sublimation, our color format should be RGB/8 with the color profile sRGB IEC 61966-2.1. This is the most current color profile for RGB/8, but those of you who are using a Mac may find that you fare better with the older color profile, which is Adobe RGB 1998. Mac users are known to have a little bit of color discrepancy, and that tends to fix that. Please keep in mind that color profile and ICC profile for your printer are two completely separate things, and your ICC profile is in your print settings, not in your document setup. We want to make sure we have a transparent background check marked, and once we're ready, we can hit Create to open up that new document. Next, I want to import the photograph that I want to work with. We can do this by selecting the Place Image tool, which is this little picture here in our Tools panel. Now I've got a few here to choose from. This is Olivia. She is an avid dancer, if you can't tell. And when you're wanting to do this technique, photos that have a lot of background are actually the best to use. Now, you may or may not have a good photo with a good background. And if that's the case, that's okay. We are going to work with one that doesn't quite have that just so we can go through the process. But the more background you have, the better for sure when you want to use this technique. So I'm going to go ahead and select Open from my File Explorer and then click and drag to size this onto my document. Now I want to rotate this, so I'm going to click that rotate icon there, and I'll go ahead and get it centered on my page. I know it's centered when I see those red and green access lines for my X and Y axis. Those are your snapping guides, which are activated when you have the magnet icon selected up here in your toolbar. You can also click on this little down arrow to check mark all of these settings so that you always see the guides where you need them. Just make sure that you don't select Show Snapping Candidates, because if you do, all of your layers will have a purple outline and it's kind of annoying. The next thing that we're going to need as like a nice little shortcut is a PNG watercolor mask layer. Now I'm using this portrait mask set from Creative Fabrica. This has 20 different frames. We can sort of see some of the different ones here. And what's great about these is you can actually use them standalone without any of the extra work that we're putting in. You can just choose to use these and clip your photographs in them, which will be the first part of what we do. But I like to give mine a little bit more so that they just have more of that blown out watercolor look. But these are super user friendly, and you can choose just to stop at that point, which I'll show you in just a minute. So I've already downloaded this from Creative Fabrica. I have a membership to Creative Fabrica. I can't recommend it enough. Primarily, I get fonts and digital papers from here, which I use a lot in my graphic design work, but I also find great little assets like this. And it's nice to not have to worry about paying anything extra, having that monthly membership where everything is included. It's absolutely worth it in my book. It's the only one that I have, and I definitely get my money's worth. So I've already downloaded that. So we're going to import that the same way that we imported our picture. I'm going to go to File and then Place and open up those portraits. All right. So they've got a few different ones here, and keep in mind that you can kind of build on these if you don't love the shape. I do like ones that have a bit more of a solid fill, but I'm kind of digging this heart one, and I feel like this is going to be really the best for what I'm planning to do with this. I'm thinking about turning this into an ornament tutorial I'm thinking about for you guys. And so I want to be able to give this to my friend for her daughter. This is Olivia. And so I think that this will look best. So I'm going to click and drag to resize that once you see that little down arrow with the puddle. And I want to just, you know, get it over top of my picture and really try and fill it out. Now, if you're not sure if you've got everything covered, you can just come to that opacity option in the layers panel, enter that down to like 50% or 75%, and then you can see what's going to fall in there. And you can sort of move things around and adjust it how you would like. Now, it is better to have more background to fill out all of a mask like this, but if you don't, it's not a big deal. The PNG mask is just to give us a good starting point and save us quite a few steps of the more advanced way of doing this. Because this PNG mask is black, I want to actually switch it over to white. So we're going to set that back up to 100%. And we need to rasterize this to start. So I'm going to right click on it and choose rasterize. And then I'm going to come to my rectangle tool over here in my tools panel. And I'm going to click and drag so it covers the whole thing. I want to make sure it's filled with white. And I'm going to clip it inside of that heart. So I'm just going to click on that layer, hold my cursor down and drag it so that the nose of my cursor is touching the name of that layer and that I see that transparent 3/4 length rectangle there underneath. And when I click, it will be inside and you can see that it's white now. And then all we're going to do is right click on that again and choose rasterize. We're going to be clipping our photograph into this little heart watercolor mask that we have here. But before we do that, we want to create a color palette that we can work with for this project. So with your swatches panel selected, you're going to choose this little hamburger menu over in the corner, and you're going to select Create Palette from Document. That's going to create a color palette from the document that you currently have open. And I'm going to choose as Document Palette because that'll add it to just this document that we're working in, not every document that I open. If you choose Application Palette, it'll add it to all of your files. So once we choose that, you can see it's giving us an assortment of colors that it has pulled from what is currently visible on our document. Now we'll go ahead and select our dancer layer, and I'm going to right click and choose to rasterize that as well so that it shows as a pixel layer. This will allow us to edit it however we would like. We want to click and drag to clip that inside of our PNG mask, just like we did before, holding it so that your cursor is touching the name of that layer and you see that semi-transparent rectangle. Release it once you do, and you'll see that it is clipped inside. With this layer and size selected, you can then choose to move it around or resize it to best fit the look that you're going for. Now I want her to be centered in the middle of this heart, so I'm just gonna adjust it a little bit and just bring it down as well. All right, I think that that will work. If you have any hard edges because your photograph happens to be smaller than the PNG mask layer that you're working with, you want to start by softening up all of those edges. We can do this by coming to our pixel persona, which is the little checkered icon there that you see in the top corner. Select your erase brush tool and then come down and select your basic brushes. Then select a round light brush. Your hardness should be set to 0%. Opacity at 100% is a little high. Let's go with about 75%. I'm going to increase my nozzle size using the bracket key on my keyboard. That's the one that looks like a little staple. And I want to just rub along this edge. Make sure you have your layer selected first, and then I'm just going to rub along this edge. I want to soften it. And I want to eliminate the hard line, but I don't want to take too much off anyplace else. So you'll find that you probably need to pass over it like twice. And I'll do the same over here. Good. Now I also want to soften just a little bit along these edges of my watercolor mask because that edge is a little bit harsh. So to do that, I want to use a different brush. I want one that has a bit more watercolor-like texture. So you're going to scroll down to your watercolor brushes that are the default here, and you can choose to select this Watercolor Bristle 01. When you hover over your picture, if I make that a little bit bigger, you can sort of see how big it is. And I'm going to take that and I'm just going to click it along my edges. Again, we still have our erase brush tool selected. And because it's a brush tool, it's going to honor the whatever brush you have selected. So I just went around and just gave a quick pass to sort of soften up the edge of my photo. Next, we can select our smudge brush tool. And with this, we want to bring out some of this edge for one to fill in this space. We don't need to fill it in all the way. We just want to bring it out a little bit. And also to just smudge our overall background. Once again, because this is a brush tool, you can choose to use one of these watercolor brushes. Now the Watercolor Bristle 01 is a good one, but it's a little concentrated. So I'm going to choose Light Wash. My strength is at 50%. And basically what you're going to do is make sure you still have that layer selected. I like to do little swirl motions and swirl outwards, or like little half C's. So you're just going to kind of bring it around. You want to start at the edge that you need to fill and just drag it out. Where you start and where you head is how that flow is going to go. So think of it like wiping your finger through some wet paint. So I want to try and bring some of it out if I can. I don't want to hinder my main character, my dancer, too much. Just going to drag this out a little bit. So you're going to want to feather all along the edges anywhere that you can. And then you're going to want to work your way back in over the over our whole background here. And so for this, I would do little circular motions like this, or little strokes like this. Be very careful not to get too much of your dancer. Remember, we're trying to soften our background. We don't want to take out our dancer in the process, but we do want to soften the lines that are closest to her. You know, again, we're not trying to see all the in-depth texture of our background. Now, if you have a more solid color background, this is of course less work because you don't have a lot to blur out. Like if you just have a picture of your pet against a neutral colored wall. But when you don't, which is what most of us are dealing with, you are going to have to do just this little bit of extra work. Also, if your picture is big enough, as I said before, you can actually completely stop the process once you clip it inside of this PNG mask. You don't even have to do all these other steps. If you just wanted the basic texture of the mask and you're satisfied with that. Now, I like mine to look a bit more, so I am going to do all of this to really help give me the look that I'm going for. Now, we're just going to soften these up, go in with a little bit smaller in here. And I do find that doing little swirling motions or like half C's tends to work the best. And when you're close to any edges of a person, I usually just go in the direction of their skin. So like the leg is going down, so I'm just going down so that we don't end up taking too much away from our character. Okay. All right, so once you're content with how softened you've got your background, it is time to go ahead and add in a pixel layer. So we're going to choose this Add Pixel Layer icon, which looks like a little checkerboard in the bottom of our Layers panel, and then we're going to select our paintbrush tool. And I'm going to come over to our Watercolors panel and choose, let's see, the Diluted Grainy is a good one. Also the Light Wash. I'm going to use this large diluted watercolor. I think that that's kind of my preferred for this. We want our color to be white. And we want this layer to be set to multiply. So come to this drop down here, or set to overlay, sorry, and choose overlay. I'm going to change the opacity of my brush to 75%. Now we're going to go over our picture, and you want to do sort of like a cross hatch motion where you just sort of make like little X's. And you're going to start to notice it blend in and have more of a washy watercolor look. We're essentially just adding texture to this. We don't want to get over top of our main character too much. We really want to be focusing on the background and only hitting them where it's necessary. One thing you can do is when you are reaching areas that you may need to hit their skin or whatever, I usually just lower the opacity. So I'll come up here and I'll go down to maybe 35% and use a bigger nozzle and then just sort of go over the skin with some clicking motions just to sort of break that up, but not wash it out too much. All right, and you can overlap any areas that you feel necessary. I think that that's pretty good. Now from here, all we really need to do is start building out some of that background color to fill in the rest of our PNG mask and add a few splatters just for good effect. So we're going to do that by selecting to add another pixel layer. So I have that one selected now. And make sure that it's still clipped inside your PNG mask, but it's above our dancer. We still want to have our paintbrush tool selected as well. Now, the brushes that come with Affinity Designer are not super spectacular for the watercolor brushes. So this part is definitely better if you happen to have purchased a good watercolor brush set. My favorite is the Trailhead watercolor brushes, which are linked in the description as well. Hands down, one of my favorite brush sets. I use it so much. I love that it has different splatters and splashes that you can work with and different brush strokes. Like 10 out of 10 for this brush pack for sure. I am a big fan. If you're just using the watercolor brushes that come with Affinity Designer, then I recommend going with either the low absorption bristles 02 or the dense wash. You'll notice that they do have a little splatter to them. If I enlarge it so you can see it. It's not much, but it can definitely work for what we're doing. So I'm going to start with that. And what we want to do is come to our swatches panel in that palette, and we want to pick colors that are relative to the area that we are going to add these little splotches into. So I'm going to start with blue, for example, because I'm going to be over here, and I'm just going to sort of add a few taps in here, and I'm just clicking. I'm not paintbrushing on. I don't want it to build it up. I just want to be adding in this texture and the drops of those colors. This actually has a little bit of green, but I don't think this pulled any green. It did not. So for this one, I think I might just leave it with blue, but I can also come over and add a little bit of tan in there. Let's go. It's kind of fleshy, but we'll give it a go. Now we're looking at sort of filling this out in our edge spaces. And also we want to fill this out in our edge spaces of our PNG element, but also just anywhere where it kind of makes sense. The final splatters that we're going to add in will really help bring this together. Like I said, because we're using this particular brush set, for this, there is less good options. I really prefer the Master Watercolor brushes, which I am going to end up using just to show the full effect. But you can work with what you have and just sort of make it work. I'm going to come for the, let's try the, I'm going to come for the diluted grainy or the smooth round for this other section. Let's go with the smooth round for a minute. So over here, I'm really looking for more tans and browns. I don't really want to bring any black over here, but I do want some blue. So I'm going to just, while I still have that blue, I'm going to tap in a few of those. And let's see. Let's come over and get something in that orangey brown. I think this will work. Now I'm going to do this pretty big because I don't want a whole bunch of circles that are really noticeable. Remember, I'm trying to just build up. So I'm going to pass over that a few times and notice how it really kind of blended in that section down there that we had previously open. Now I can come in with a black or something and kind of toss that in over top too to really help bring in that background. I think I'm going to switch back to the dense wash for this. Maybe just, yeah, not too bad. The main thing when you're trying to fill out a background is just to sort of make it all look like there's something going on there that goes along with the background that you have, especially if you couldn't, if it wasn't big enough, or depending on how well you sort of smudged that background together. Now look for any other areas where you might need to add a little bit more. Remember that you can keep building up these different colors and different brush strokes that you're using until you get a full watercolor effect. So I'm going to add in just a little bit of this skin tone over in here. There we go. I just kind of let that one build up by holding my cursor down. Do the same over here. Still bring a little bit more of that skin tone around into my picture. Now you can even get into these other areas as well. The main thing is you want to be cautious of not covering up your character too much with the fun colors. We want a little bit, but we want the little bit that we have to be a little bit more concentrated is what it is. All right, so once you get this all together, keep in mind that if you accidentally cover too much of your character space, you can always select your layer and come back with that erase brush and just kind of be like, okay, I need to clean her up a little bit, which I might actually do that right up in here. Just kind of clean up around her arms and stuff. We want it to have a little bit of texture because it is supposed to be part of this whole watercolor effect, but we don't want to overpower it. So pretty sweet and simple here. You can just add in those layers and this will be the result that you get. And again, you can keep building however much colors you want until you're really happy with how muted the background is in relation to your main character. Now, I like to add some additional splatters to really give this a much more realistic effect. So that's where the Trailhead water brushes come in. I'm going to create a new pixel layer. I want it to be above my group that I've created because it's going to be on top of it. And I'm going to come over to my tool panel and select my paintbrush tool, and then come to my brushes and choose that Trailhead Masters watercolor sets that I have here. The drips and the splatters are two of my favorite. Again, they have so much versatility. There's some really great ones here, and I love it. So this one is called Brush Flex 2. I'm going to grab that one first, and we're basically going to do the same thing in terms of the colors. We're going to choose colors that accent where we want to add in some splatters. So I'm going to just, add in a few. I like to just click when I do this so that I don't end up with a whole concentration where I'm not wanting it. But we also want to make sure we're clicking in on our actual layer here so that we do get those little splatters on our character. That's just going to help give it a little bit more realism in our digital world. All right, so I need some browns over here. Now this is a pretty spaced out splatter, and I'm just using this to kind of add in my last little bits here, but I am going to also add some bigger splatters. So that's the drips. The splatters themselves, these ones are fun. So let's see. This is called Wet Splatter. You can see the texture of it right there. I'm going to give this, we need some blue over here. Let's go with this shade of blue. You can rotate these with your arrow key to rotate the nozzle. And again, you can use that bracket key to make it bigger or smaller. And then just click and add it. Now, if it seems like it's a little bit too strong, you can lower that opacity before you apply it. So I've set that down to 50%. And then that is just a little bit softer. I think I liked it more when it was darker, but not maybe as dark. So I'm going to go with 75%. Boom, that's perfect. And sort of rotate it a little bit and add another one over here. Fantastic. Let's see what other ones we got here. There's some really good ones. This one's a wet splatter. Ooh, so that's a little bit more concentrated. I think that's going to work great in this backgroundy area that we've got. So let's come to those swatches again, and I'm going to choose, see how this flesh tone looks. Oh, I think it's a little too pink. Let's try the really pale one. All right, the pale one, a million times better. I'm also going to bring it up in here since this is a nice, good concentrated one. I'm going to lower the opacity to 75 over here and just splatter that in. Maybe just extend this down a little bit, give my heart a little bit more shape. And yeah, I think the only thing is I want to add a little bit of purple for that outfit that she's wearing. It looks like the program didn't pick up a purple only because it only picks up so many colors. That's all right. We can just grab our color dropper and bring it into where the dress is and choose that purple. And then come to those brushes, and this is sort of a light splatter. This is a light splatter too. That one's a little bit more spaced out. Okay, I think I like this one. I'm just going to rotate it a little bit using my arrow key, and I'm going to put it near that dress just so we can have a little bit of that too. I don't actually like that splatter. Let's try a different one. Trial and error is part of the process. All right. Oops. Shrink that on down. Let's try this one. All right, I do like that one better, just not that concentrated. So I'm going to lower it to 75% and much better. And I think I'll also add some up over in here and maybe just rotate this a little bit more and give another purple. All right. So once you're satisfied with all of your splatters and your masking and everything that you've put together here, you are good to export. So really just look for any areas that maybe you want to clean up. If you covered your character a little too much, you can just select that pixel layer and choose that erase brush tool and kind of come in and clean that up. Remember, it's okay if there's a little bit touching, but you don't want to lose too much of your character in the process. Now, you can also choose to further edit this because the only real changes that we made to this layer was to just soften those edges and smudge them out and blur up the background. So if you wanted to come down to your adjustments and maybe you want to adjust the brightness and contrast, you can do that. You could decrease the brightness or increase the brightness and adjust that contrast to give you more of that blown out look. And once you're all set, just go ahead and group those layers together by selecting both of them in your layers panel. You can hold down Control or Command and select each one, and then select Group. Now you're ready to go ahead and export this. You can simply select that, go to File, and then Export. And this will pop up. Make sure it's set to PNG, select export, and your file explorer will open for you to save. Remember that when you export, you're going to be exporting just the finished flattened file. If you want to save this project and come back to it, you need to go to File and then Save As. Your file explorer will open and give you the option to save the Affinity formatted file where you can come back and revisit these layers. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. As I said, relatively quick and easy process to create that blown out watercolor-like effect. Keep in mind that your background is going to be the biggest factor into this. If you have a lot of colors to work with, you're going to have a lot more going on texture-wise and splatter-wise than if you just have a neutral colored background that works a little bit better with your main character. Either way, it's a fun process to play around with, and I hope that you guys will give it a try and share it with us in Sublimation Graphics and Tutorials on Facebook. Don't forget that if you enjoyed this tutorial tonight, I hope that you will sign up for the Affinity Designer Digital Graphic Design Masterclass for Sublimation. It is absolutely a great course, and I'm not just saying that because I'm biased. We've gotten nothing but positive feedback on it and have been enjoying watching students excel in learning to use the software and feel comfortable with whatever types of projects they want to tackle next. You'll find that link and discount code in the video description, as well as the links to everything else we used tonight. Thank you so much for watching and have a great rest of your day.